I used to really struggle with staying lean, especially when I was trying to build on muscle at the same time. Mostly because when I was trying to build on muscle, I was just trying to put on as much weight as possible. Knowing what I know now, it's actually not that hard to stay lean year round, even when you're trying to bulk up, put on muscle and everything. It's actually just really quite easy, and it's nowhere near as complicated as people make it out to be. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how I stay lean year round and keep looking like this with around 10% body fat, even when I'm still trying to bulk up. So the first point I want to go over is intermittent fasting. This is a really essential new tool and habit which I've implemented, which just makes staying lean so much easier. The idea here is that you're only having a medium-sized meal at lunchtime and then a larger meal, which is about 50% of your calories at dinner. Then you're also allowed another snack, a late night snack, like a lot of people like to have after this as well, which we'll get to in a second. But the idea here is that you're actually going to be cutting out breakfast completely. Now, the reason why I believe cutting out breakfast completely is essential is because, first of all, when you wake up, you're not actually that hungry, and a lot of people are just forcing themselves to eat. Second of all, breakfast, you don't actually need breakfast at all. If you actually don't eat in the morning as soon as you wake up, your brain's going to be a lot quicker and faster anyway, and you're going to be more efficient with your thoughts, you're going to have more clarity. And breakfast is actually just something which 200, 300 years ago, it was just made up. Think back to the primal days where our ancestors used to be hunters and gatherers. They wouldn't just wake up and eat straight away because it was impossible, because they wouldn't have a food source. They would actually have to go out and do something and hunt, and then they would be able to eat, and they would normally just have one or maximum two large meals throughout the day. So this is exactly how I want you to start eating. Start having one meal at midday or around about your lunchtime, whenever that is, and then have a larger meal at dinner time. You're also allowed one meal, which is just going to be a small snack after dinner if need be as well. So what happens is when you get into this routine, you're going to realize that breakfast was adding in a ton of sugar into your diet, a ton of empty calories, and if you can cut this out, staying lean and building muscle is going to be so much easier. One of the biggest issues with staying lean I see online are people talking about keto and people talking about vegan diets and going extreme. And the issue is these extreme diets, they never ever work, because people get too ravenous, they get far too hungry, and these habits and these diets are just really not sustainable for someone who's thinking long term, like 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. This is something which you may be able to keep up for maybe maximum 2 to 3 months. However, if you just go to this level of extremity, you're just going to quit. It's just going to get too much, you're going to get tired, and eventually you're just going to stop and you're just going to give up. And then what's going to happen is your old habits are just going to creep back in, your old diet, and you're just going to lose all the progress you made. So building on this point, one of the most essential, highest return on investment things you can implement if you want to stay lean is to just have designated times throughout the day where you're allowed to eat. So what happens when you do this, say if you say I'm allowed to eat between 12 to 1 p.m. and then 6 to 7 p.m. for dinner, and then I'm allowed a snack at 9 p.m. If you actually tell your brain that this is when you're going to eat and you're not going to eat outside these hours, your brain's just going to start to latch onto this and realize that you don't actually have endless freedom and that you actually do have these windows where you can eat. And this means that throughout the day, you're just going to stop snacking because your brain's going to latch onto the fact that you don't need the snack, or you're not in your designated meal time right now, so you're not going to eat. And it's allowed to do this, and it's allowed to actually latch onto this thought because it knows that you're still going to get that meal a little bit later on. So if you implement this, like I said, it's going to just make it so much more easy for you to stay disciplined on this diet. So eating close to maintenance. This is going to be the most sustainable practice for you to have weight loss and to stay lean. Do not go extreme with the amount of calories, like I said before, keto, vegan diet. Do not just completely cut out carbs and calories, because it's going to be so hard to stay consistent with this. It's not a sustainable practice. So 80% of people who make significant weight losses gain it back within 2 years. So if you're someone who's just spent maybe 3 to 6 months, even 9 to 12 months, like some people do, just really focused in on their diet, just thinking, oh, I'm gonna cut down calories by 2,000 calories compared to what I'm eating now, I'm gonna be hungry all day. Even if you miraculously stick to this and you actually begin to lose all this weight, 80% of people just gain it all back, because once you get to the stage where you lost all that weight, you know that this isn't sustainable. You can't keep this up for 5-10 years. So what happens is you just gain it back on, you just go back to your old diet and you just blow it all up again and you get back to the same size you were. So 80% of people put all this weight back on. So if you do eat close to maintenance, people think that you're going to have fat loss slower, and yes, you will have, your fat loss will be slower. However, this is just a much more sustainable practice. I'd rather you go like this, where you're just eating around maintenance or a little bit less than maintenance calories, and you're just gradually decreasing weight, than just someone who goes extreme and then just puts it back on again. This is so much more of a sustainable practice. You're not going to have that ravenous hunger throughout the day. You're going to be able to stick to this 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and you can stay lean constantly with this plan. So just make sure that you have your maintenance calories set, and then just eat a little bit less than this each time. Don't go extreme, and just stick to this throughout a prolonged period of time. So the way that you get success, there's a quote says that it's not by doing the extreme thing one time, it's by doing the obvious thing over an extreme period of time. This is how you get consistent, long-lasting results. So stay a little bit less than maintenance and keep this consistent. A question you can ask yourself is, what would you say to that fat person who's just starting out in the gym and it's their first day, and they're going in and they're saying, oh, I'm going to stay there for 4 hours, I'm going to lift, I'm going to do every exercise in the gym, I'm going to lift do my whole body and just do multiple exercises per muscle group, and then I'm going to come back tomorrow and keep doing this and do this for 7 days straight every week for the next 6 months to put on as much muscle as possible. What would you say to that person? You'd very likely say that this is way too extreme, it's not sustainable, and you're just going to quit. People who think like this and start the gym with this mindset and don't actually have they don't actually have their loss of ego to actually realize that you need to build up to this extent, and even that extent's a bit extreme anyway. But people who just come in thinking that they're going to go extreme straight off the bat and think that they're going to stick to it long term, every single time they just quit. It's the same thing with fat loss and dieting. If you just have this extreme diet in your mind thinking, yep, I'm going to cut down my calories by this huge amount and I'm going to stick to it, maybe you will for a few weeks, a few months, but you're just going to quit and just going to go back up. So the very last point I want to make is just have food quality in mind when you're dieting. It's not so much about just cutting down on calories, it's just about the nutritional value that you're getting with your food. So bear in mind that protein is the most filling macronutrient. So if you want to be full on less calories and carbs, go with red meat, go with steak, go with chicken, cut out things like pasta, which just make you feel full and bloated and inflamed all the time. Eat potatoes. Potatoes are also really filling. They're also a vegetable, they're really healthy for you. And if you can just cut down to single ingredient meals, look out for the word organic when you're shopping, because this just means that the food is obviously the highest quality that it could be if it's organic. And just make sure you actually know exactly what you're eating so that you can actually track your calories. So don't go for heavily processed food. Go for more natural food like steak, meat, nuts, vegetables, fruit. And if you can just add in more of this food and just take out some of the processed food you were eating before and then eat around about maintenance, you're just going to have a resounding impact on your health, and it's really going to help you stay lean.